Welcome to episode 35 of the Tri-State Hockey Podcast presented by Novig. I'm your host, Jonny Lazarus, joined by my good friends, longtime NHL reporter Arthur Staple and Stanley Cup champion Mike Rupp. Guys, I got to be honest, I have no idea where this episode is going to lead us. We only have one voicemail for one of our most loyal voicemail callers, and that is Chris from Hicksville. We're not going to play that just yet. The Islanders will probably dominate this conversation because I think we may have learned something a little bit new about Matthew Schaefer last night with that final 2-3 minute shift that he put in regulation, getting pucks out, making sure he's breaking plays up. But what an eventful game it was for the Islanders and Columbus Blue Jackets, a game the Islanders absolutely needed to win after getting shit pumped 7-3 in Montreal the night before. So let's just start there. Arthur, did you learn anything new last night about your New York Islanders?
Yeah, I learned that they can play a simple game when they need to, and not just kind of, shoveling the puck out and hopping off after 30 seconds, which is what they were doing in the third period in Ottawa last week. And we talked about that. It came back to bite them big time. I think they had one low danger scoring chance in that third period in Ottawa, according to Clearside Hockey, and they scored on it. And otherwise they just got completely wrecked in that third. And, the goal was Brady Tkachuk's goal was kind of an accidental, comedy of errors, but they got what they deserved. And then in Montreal, they really didn't play well from the jump, expected them to. So you needed to see them dig deep without Ryan Pulock. I think maybe that was the thing we saw. Adam Boquist came in, and I thought he played really well. I thought they definitely seemed like they learned from some of their mistakes. They haven't been great in their own end in terms of set. When the other team has set offense against them, they've really looked kind of squirrely at times, pretty much all year, and they've been able to outscore some of their problems, especially since the Olympic break. But last night was simple. It was a lot like the game in Toronto. Simple. They're playing a much better team. Kept the chances down, kept Columbus away from the front of Ilya Sorokin's net. Sorokin was really good in the third period when he needed to be. They got a little screwed by the NHL Situation Room on the overturned 2-0 goal in the third period, which we'll certainly talk about. But they didn't let that affect them either, which was important. There was 7.5 left, back to 1-0. They didn't change much. They knew Columbus was going to push. And like you said, Matthew Schaefer kind of had to be out there for the final 3 minutes with no Ryan Pulock. You really only have 2 or 3 guys that can defend well in that 6, and they all did the job, especially Schaefer. And, I think I don't know if we've talked about it a lot here, but the evolution of the NHL is you don't put your crease clearing guys out when it's 5-on-6. You put the guys out that can skate the puck out of trouble and make plays with the puck. And there's nobody better on the Islanders D and maybe the entire Islanders team at doing that this year than Matthew Schaefer. So it made sense, and he's got the stamina and the whole thing. And yeah, it was an impressive win, a nail biter, but I don't expect too much else from this team. I think it's 26 1-goal wins now this year. So live to see another day of that.
26 1-goal wins. That's got to be the most in the league, right?
It is. And I think it's tied a franchise record for them. So they're back in a playoff spot for now. Detroit's got a game in hand on them from behind, but hopefully they continue to climb. They got Chicago coming in tomorrow, which, those games are always after a tough week of playing teams that they're battling for spots with. You've got a team that's out of it from the other conference. So another chance for them to kind of show some fortitude this time of year. But they've shown us a lot so far this year, and it's good to see them back above the cut line.
Nice little homestand here too. They got
they were
nine
of the last 11, I think, at home now.
Wow, that's unreal. I'll actually be there on Tuesday night too, so I'm excited to be in the building tomorrow night to watch them take on the Blackhawks. But Rupper,
are you going to see which logo you want to get tattooed on you? Or are you going to start getting some samples of ideas?
No, I'm feeling pretty good about that now.
Yeah,
I think you got to go with the Robin Leonard, the map of Long Island, blue and orange, right here. Yeah,
I think Fisherman should be the play. I mean, that's
Fisherman with my face on it.
Right. Yeah, right on the chest where the logo of the jersey goes. Maybe right here.
We'll have Darsh do it, and Darsh will put his face on it.
We're gonna have a whole. If the Islanders make the finals, we're gonna have a whole show just with just people send in instead of their voicemails. It's gonna be different tattoo designs for you. So
there is no chance this is happening. There's no chance. There's no chance. But I wanted to read this stat. Mike Kelly put it out this morning. Ilya Sorokin with his league-leading 7th shutout last night against the Blue Jackets. The Islanders ranked 31st in inner slot shots and high danger chances against, 28th in expected goals against. They are 4th in actual goals against. Sorokin is 1st in slot save percentage. He's 1st in quality starts. He's 1st in games stolen. He's 1st in shutouts. And he's 1st in goals saved above expected per 60. Pretty damn good. I'd say maybe last night locked him the Vezina trophy. I know, Arthur, that's sports logic. I know Clearsight might be a little bit different, but Mike Kelly is certainly a guy to trust when it comes to the stats and putting those out. So I think Ilya Sorokin pretty much locked up the Vezina last night. No, Rupper?
Yeah, I mean, everything was last night was probably, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but that's probably one of the more complete games they played defensively in front of them, though, too. So I don't know. Arthur mentioned like he made the saves we needed to make the saves, but he wasn't asked to be all world Ilya Sorokin. So that to me is the kind of key to all of this. I mean, you're going to have nights where he's going to have to pull the cape out, but you're going to have some nights where you play just pretty solid for 60 minutes. And I think that's what they got. A lot of those numbers you mentioned, excuse me, are great numbers for a guy that is positioned probably to win the Vezina. The defensive, some of the defensive let-ups this year, just they drive you nuts watching him. And we were talking about it last week and in our group thread, Arthur, I was texting you, like, I can't even, like, the thought process in some of these drive me nuts. So if they can just tighten that up a little bit, we're not asking for them to completely change and be a shutdown team, but if they could just be okay, they've got the goaltender who will make up the difference. So I thought Ilya Sorokin did a phenomenal job, and we can get into those last 255 that Matthew Schaefer was on the ice of the game. I thought Sorokin did exactly what you want your goaltender to do in the closing minutes of a game, is get as many whistles as you can. Get as many whistles as you can, and you can argue, well, that keeps their other team's best players on the ice, but you have your specialty shutdown, let's close this game out players out there, and you gotta keep and mess up any flow. And I thought that, I don't know how many whistles there were. I feel like there was a ton of them down the stretch. Sorokin was freezing everything he could, and I thought he gave his team a chance to stay fresh and most importantly, probably keep Matthew Schaefer out there on the ice. It was an impressive closeout, I thought, to a pretty impressive game for them.
I'll say too, another factor, and obviously I think Patrick Waugh was definitely, kind of playing a 5-1, a rotation of mostly 5D. A lot of guys rotating with Schaefer, and Adam Boquist really spotted in infrequently. Same with Scotty Mayfield, since that was the nominal third pair. I think not having Carson Soucy and Scott Mayfield as a pair was an improvement for the Islanders defensively. They have had a really, really rough go. And, I think when you are making up the pairs when Pulock is healthy, Schaefer and Pulock has been a pair for a while. Pelech and Tony DeAngelo have been a pair for a while. So there's really nowhere else for those two guys to go. But I feel like the example of last night, and if Pulock's back tomorrow or later in the week, I think you got to look at some Soucy, DeAngelo, and Pelech Mayfield. Pelech and Mayfield have been a pair at times over the years for many years because those guys have been teammates for a long time. They just don't seem to get the puck out of their own end when Soucy and Mayfield are together. So maybe that was kind of by necessity to see some changes last night, but kind of breaking those two guys up seemed to make them a little bit more adept. I thought Soucy played defensively his best game since the Islanders traded for him last night. And, and Scott Mayfield, he is what he is. He's a big body. He doesn't skate that great. Some of his decision-making, like Rupper was saying, he's kind of maybe the guy that Rupper was referring to. Some of the decision-making isn't always the best from Scotty, but the effort is always there. So I feel like, and I also feel like when Pulock gets back, I wonder, I've seen this suggested online a couple of times that maybe they could go 11-7 just so you're rotating pairs as often as you can, because you have such a wild card in a guy in Schaefer who can play with anybody. He showed last night he can play his offside almost as well as he can play his natural left side. So get him his 28 to 30 minutes and just keep rotating some of these other guys around. They all seem to have played with each other at times anyway. So, I wonder if there's the, Patrick Waugh, the gears are moving there in his head with his coaching staff about some ways to be better and a little bit fresher and a little bit more on their toes in their own end as far as their decor goes, because they learned maybe last night they can do that.
One quick thing here, Rupper, just to follow up with Arthur. You mentioned briefly Tony DeAngelo. Like he's been a perfect fit there. His contract right now, I think he's at 1.75 million, and his contract ends this year. Is he a guy that you think extends for? I don't want to say long term, but maybe like 3 or 4 years on Long Island. He's 30 years old, but he's been a pretty good fit since he joined a couple years ago.
We kind of said that, like Arthur, I think one of the earlier episodes where me personally, it feels like Tony DeAngelo found himself a home here,
Yeah,
and
cheap too.
it is a perfect fit. Now, there's a lot of value in him in what he's brought to the table. So, does he want to chase something, or does he want to have content? Be content being on the New York Islanders. Like, I think that's where the question's at. I don't think there's any question that he'll get offered a contract. And so we could sit here and say, well, he is on a very team friendly deal for what he's doing on the ice. But every player you're going to want to bump. He's going to want to bump. How big is that bump? Is that something that's, because if you remember, like that's what kind of I'm trying to think back when it was a different stage, different time, but that kind of got him out of where was it? He went to Carolina first.
Carolina, he was in Philly briefly.
Yeah, so it was,
and then back to Carolina.
Yeah. So it was just like, is he going to ask too much? You know what I'm saying? Like these guys that fall into they're good deals, so that what makes it a good fit too. So if he all of a sudden wants to get paid and he's not a good deal, then maybe they move on. But I think they get something done here. I think he's played a long time where he's been in the KHL. Like I think he wants to find and be in one place. So I think he's got that here. I think he's, we talk about those last 3 minutes. He was one of them who's out there briefly in those last 3 minutes with Matthew Schaefer as well. So he's been given more of a responsibility here than I think he's gotten in a lot of different teams he's played for.
Yeah, I think the hard part, especially after what we've seen the last like 15, 16 games from the Islanders, is you know what you get with Tony. He's a high risk, high reward player. But he's got 31, 32 points, which second among the defensemen on the Islanders. He really is the only other kind of mobile puck moving guy among their six, and that has a lot of value. But also with the style that they want to play, he does fit that. But with their struggles in their own end, like I was just talking about, that they've been, when I look at Clearside Hockey, I'm sure Sportlogic has the same. When the opposing team is set up offensively in their zone, their expected goal numbers have been bottom 2 or 3 in the league the whole year. They're giving up way too many great chances. They've defended well off the rush and prevented those, and that's kind of a 5-player effort, and it is in the D zone too. I totally get that, but some of their decision making when it comes to making short passes to try to get pucks out of the zone where they fly the zone too early, a lot of things happen to kind of make them look like they're really disjointed in their own end, and a lot of it comes back to kind of those bottom 2 pairs. I mean, Schaefer has been lights out, and you live with whatever mistakes he's going to make because he's not going to make them for very much longer. And you've got Pulock and you've got Pelech, and then there's a pretty big drop off defensively to that third pair and to Tony D. So I wonder, since he's really the only guy that's up, are they going to look to upgrade that spot? Could they get somebody that has some offense on the right side that also maybe defends a little bit better? Those guys are hard to find for sure. But I wonder if they at least take a look around, getting around the draft to find somebody to maybe fill that spot and move on. I'm sure if they had their choice, they would probably move on from somebody else, maybe a Scott Mayfield, but he's got trade protection and the term on his deal, I think, still has either 4 or 5 years left to go, which is a leftover gift from Lou Lamoriello. And really, Pelech and Pulock still have multiple years left too, if you thought about moving on from one of them. So, and also lots of trade protection for both of them. So, Soucy's probably not going to come back, so you're going to have to fill something on the left side, and maybe that factors in too, where you want to go with Tony for a year or two at something at a low number, something in the 2s. But when you do that, you know what you're going to get. And and we all know Tony, and he's got, you see what you get personality wise and hockey wise with him. And there's worse things to have in this world than a guy who knows what he is and what he's capable of and what he's not, and especially can add that offense when Schaefer's not on the ice.
I want to change topics just for 1 second and rewind to Saturday night in Montreal. Not sure if everyone caught it. Like, it didn't really make its rounds on social media. I expected it to have more, I guess, pull, for lack of a better term. But Mathew Barzal shed his gloves. Like, he wanted to drop him with Nick Suzuki. And I'm kind of looking for the clip here. I'll try to get it to Vic so we can throw it on the screen. But again, like, this is another thing. And again, I don't know if there was anything more you want to say about last night's game. But the Islanders, after, getting, I guess, rubbed in it a little bit in Montreal, showed some fight, showed some balls, showed some courage. And, where we kind of criticized Barzal, although we loved what he did against Columbus, like this time the gloves actually came off. Like look at this battle with Suzuki. You could tell Barzal's a little frustrated. Suzuki gives it back to him and he sheds him. He's ready to go. Like this Matt Barzal, we've kind of talked about it all year. It's a different version, right? I mean, this is stuff you got to love to see.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the fact that we've talked about it in different instances on here too, where sometimes it depends who it is too. Like it means more coming from your best players, and you don't want your best players doing that and doing it all the time, or that. I don't think that's the case here. But once in a while to show enough's enough, or whatever the message that needs to be received is. So I love that stuff. I love the way he did. I love the way he did it too. Nick Suzuki, the other team's captain. So I mean, this is something that we've said it many times. I think that we've seen a different, or at least I've seen a different Matt Barzal in some areas of his game all season long that I guess I didn't know there was that layer. And I've always liked him as a player, but I'm starting to see some more depth to him as a player and quite frankly, a leader. And I think that that's where that comes in. So we didn't hear much about that. Good grab there by Vic and you, Johnny, bring that up because those are moments, again, it matters who does it, and you had your most skilled forward do it.
All I would add there is maybe, and Rupper, maybe you can give us an instance of this. Maybe he should get, he's on the ice there with Andersley and Braden Shen, two guys who drop the gloves pretty regularly. Maybe he can give them a little bit of heads up. He's like, if I snap here, could you just like be within maybe 5 or 10 feet? Because Caden Gould, who's a pretty big dude, came flying in there, and then you're risking like a guy who can really fight taking on Mathew Barzal, which is 100% the thing you do not want to have there. If Nick Suzuki wants to drop the gloves with him, fine. That's probably an even tilt. That's a featherweight fight in the NHL, and you can accept that all day long. But when one of their big boys comes flying in 50 miles an hour to defend their captain, and it's Mathew Barzal, you're like, somebody needs to be close by that knows how to fight and can peel guys off. And I thought if you extended that clip a little bit, there were 10 guys just
everyone comes in. Yeah.
Barzy goes back at Suzuki. He really wanted a piece of him. It wasn't just a distraction or frustration. Like there was something that happened that was said or done that Barzy really wanted to go. And, he got tossed from the game. It didn't really matter at that point. But, it was a shit game. They didn't play well. They didn't start well. And they certainly didn't finish well, even after it was 3-3 early in the third. They just didn't look like themselves. So, like you said, good to see someone just kind of show some fire. Didn't really amount to much. There wasn't a big fight. There wasn't a good viral moment out of it. But I think it's just another little thing on the pile of things from this Islander team that like they're all invested. And this season has been a lot about vibes and excitement and a lot of memes and stuff from them.
Memes,
kind of getting. They're kind of blossoming into a different sort of organization now without Lou there in terms of Schaefer playing. And I had someone kind of say to me the other day, like, think about if Lou was still here. And again, this is not a knock on Lou. His methods are tried and true. But does Matthew Schaefer even play this whole season if Lou Lamoriello is in charge of this team? Lou does not play a lot of 18-year-olds. It's just not part of his MO. He's very big on patient development. So you have that part of it that Schaefer has kind of brought this team to a different level. And, the digital content, all the things that they're freer to do now and kind of showcase some personality. I think the team is showcasing some personality on the ice too that they didn't before. So I think it's all of the same piece, and it's good building blocks. It's good foundation, but also they got to make the playoffs this year the way things are going. So to be able to recover from Saturday on a back-to-back, Sorokin going back-to-back too, and like Rupper said, they didn't need Sorokin to be a hero last night, and that was huge because it's got to be maybe some fatigue setting in. Maybe we'll see David Riddick tomorrow against Chicago, but to see the team kind of come through in a big moment where Sorokin was under siege. I think Montreal had 17 high danger chances on Saturday. It was a disaster till he got pulled after 6-3. To see them also rally around him, who's the guy who's been their MVP from day one of the season, that was big too for me.
Yeah, what do you guys make of the? I saw on social kind of getting a little. Some people are coming at Patty Waugh on the challenge on goal 8 on that in that game. Like for me,
I
I'm
didn't even
like,
see that. I turned the game off to be
you want
honest. The challenge,
like
the eighth goal.
what's the difference? Like you want players to play to the end. Like this is a coach's
Yeah,
coach.
of
He's doing
course.
his job. Like that's his job. Like I'm surprised that like people had an issue with it, and there was writers from other organizations. They're covering different teams they're spouting off on it too. I'm like, I mean, listen, man, like the guy's doing his job. Like I didn't have a problem with that at all.
It's offside. Offside is the only.
I didn't even
people
see
can
it. Do we
bitch
have
all
the
they
video?
want about the.
Yeah, I mean,
the
so they
offside
score a
challenge.
goal. They score goal 8, and he challenges for offside. It was offside, so they took it off the board, and everyone on social's like, "Oh, it's a weird, really, Patty Waugh? Like, what? What do you mean it was offside? Like, I mean, if it, I guess you maybe would have an argument if he challenged it and it wasn't offside, and then they took, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
maybe at least be like, "What? Just you're dragging this game on." But if it was offside, then yeah, take it off the board.
Offside is
bring
also
it
the
back
one that's like
around.
so black and white. Like that's either yes or no. It's not like it's
If he,
you know.
if he challenged for goalie interference, maybe
Different
you'd
story.
say like, all right, that's unnecessary. But
Yeah,
maybe that can bring it back around to last night because, God, I hate the goalie interference debate, but last night was a bad one. That was I don't know what you guys think of that, but just watching that whole play, and I understand the rationale that like the standard for them this year has been, for the league has been, is a guy going into the crease on his own, and is he impeding the goalie from playing the puck? But like they called this a goal on the ice. So Lee's coming in. He's clearly engaged with Matthew Olivier. The puck is not going in until it goes off the post and off his shin pad and in. So even if Lee isn't there, that puck could still end up in the net because it didn't. He's not the one that put it there. So the other part for me is it's called a goal on the ice. They go to review it, and they're saying there's evidence enough to overturn that. And that to me is the one where I'm just like, if they'd called it no goal on the ice and they had confirmed that, fine, because it's a mess. But saying definitively that was goalie interference, I have a little, I've seen lots of the debates, and everybody's like, we don't know what goalie interference is. And I kind of feel like the league has been relatively consistent this year with the standard, which is if a guy is in the blue by himself and he impedes the goalie, no matter where the puck is, they're going to call it back. Fine.
Mm-hmm.
That was not that to me. And also now I'm thinking like, what's going to happen in the playoffs? Like everybody drives the net that hard in the playoffs. It just feels like it's going to be a fucking mess, right?
I will say though, I'm friends with the Columbus video coach, Aaron Augustitis, does a great job. He's actually crushed it this year. Like knowing him, and I texted him a little bit about it. He actually texted me. He's like, you like that challenge? And I was like, I actually love that you did it. I love that you did it, but I hate the call. Like, that's what I said to him fully. He goes, he said, I thought it was 50-50. But it's a situational challenge, right? You're down 1-0. You need momentum.
Yes.
Why not do it? And that's why I love that.
It makes total sense.
I didn't agree with the call.
Spot for them. It makes total sense for them to do it in that spot because 2-0, 7 minutes to go on a power play. Who cares? Because it's 2-0. Although if you don't challenge, it's still 2-0, and you're still deep in the weeds in that game. So yeah, I get it. I totally get it for them, and I got no problem with teams using those challenges in a strategic way. It's time and place. You're not just. It's not just about. It doesn't just occur in a vacuum. So I get that. I just felt like the fact that they overturned that I think I don't know if we have the clip of it, but the MSG broadcaster, Rupp and I were talking about this. Rick Bowness gave a little wink down the bench there when they got it. I think that was him saying like, well, had my fingers crossed and the rabbit's foot out, and we got lucky. But good for the Islanders to kind of make the puck don't lie saying hold up, where they got screwed, but it didn't affect the outcome of the game. But yeah, I kind of feel like the hot debate, and I'm sure Johnny, you've talked about it with Colby on the morning show about George Paris and the player safety department and what they're doing there. And I feel like that's a really deep dive kind of debate. This one with goalie interference, I feel like the goal is to give the goalie a chance to play pucks, but also to keep scoring where it is. And that one to me that left me scratching my head for sure.
Rupper, your thought?
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty nondescript play. It was a lack of a better term. It was a hockey play that had a whatever side you're on, a good bounce or a bad bounce. Like that. That to me is what it was. Like it wasn't. But the only thing is, in trying to draw my own conclusion from it, is Arthur, you just said it, where I feel like the league is really starting to take a stand on because people are going to argue, well, Matthew Olivier was leaning on him into this too, but like it's a good hard drive to the net, but it doesn't look to be any body language of stopping up. You know what I mean? And I go back to the Nathan McKinnon one from last week. Totally different, but he was showing that he was willing to go through the blue and then deal with the consequences later. And even though Nathan McKinnon wasn't going to hit the goaltender, he gets shoved into the goaltender. He still was going to the blue paint. I believe on this play that you're still going to have the player going into the blue paint without really stopping up, getting, I don't know. That's the only way I can, in my mind, figure out why it didn't count, because I didn't see goaltender interference.
I think Anders Lee's feet are sideways though, like implying that he's trying to stop.
He's turning. Yeah, though. Like I don't feel like he's like, you don't understand. Like I don't think he's sitting there like I'm going to go run this goalie. I don't think that. I think they're just trying to stop paths from going through the blue paint. You know what I mean? Like I think they want there to be a I don't know. This is just me. I think they're trying to get it where there's a stop or an avoidance of going into the blue. And then you can argue all that stuff from the McKinnon one and this one where there's a defender there that's kind of helping the player go into that area. And I get it. So I think it was a good goal. I don't want that to get lost in this. I'm trying to wrap my mind around why. And maybe so when we're watching down the stretch and in the playoffs, we can have a better gauge on what is goaltender interference.
They're turning it into the kitchen like in pickleball, right? You can't go unless it's on a bounce. You guys don't know the pickleball rules, or you do? You know them or no?
No kitchen, man.
Yeah, no kitchen. Yeah. All right, last Islanders thought before we transition here. We do have a voicemail from Chris from Hicksville, so let's cue that up, Vic.
Hey guys, Chris from Hicksville. Two quick things. One on the Vezina. I just hope that when they evaluate Ilya Sorokin's candidacy, if the Islanders make the playoffs, they will look at games like last night, the fact that he has 7 shutouts, and because I do think if they get in there, they're going to just get in, just like a lot of other teams in this Eastern Conference. It's crazy how everyone's within 85, 86 points, within 2 points of each other. In terms of my question, Victor Eklund, I know he signed an ELC with the Islanders last summer, so I'm and I saw online that his season has just ended in Sweden. I'm pretty sure he's eligible to play for the Islanders if they so chose to go that route. When you look at some of the forwards we're carrying right now, if they think he could hold his own, especially defensively, how hard do you think Darsh and Roy are going to look at that in these coming days? It'll be interesting to see if that pops up. I'd like your guys' opinion on that. I love the show. It's going to be nail biting time to the bitter end. All right, guys. Thanks. Have a great day.
Thank you, Chris. Can you clear this up for me, Arthur? I wasn't aware that Eklund had signed his entry-level contract already. So he signed and
I
he
think
was playing over in
I
Sweden?
think he signed it pretty soon after he was drafted. Yeah. I don't think he's like, my understanding is European pro guys sign whenever they sign, and that's kind of a contingency, so they can come over pretty quickly if that's what they want to do, but it doesn't necessarily affect what they're doing there. I mean, guys are in.
He's not being paid by the
prospect.
Islanders, though, is he? How does that work?
No. It doesn't
okay.
activate until he's here. So
Okay.
just like a kid in Canadian junior can sign and doesn't have to turn pro right away. It doesn't. It's just kind of a contingency, I think. But I also don't agree with Chris, or don't think what Chris's question is. Like, I don't think they're adding a 19-year-old from Europe into their NHL roster right now. I think if he came over to start his career, he would be on a tryout in Bridgeport, kind of like what Keishon Aitchison, if he ends up, their other big first round pick from last year, if his team in the OHL goes out early enough, I think that's what he'd do too. And both those guys, from my understanding, I think the Islanders want them both to start the year in Bridgeport, or at least come to camp in September, with the idea that they would play in Bridgeport next season. Even as Aitchison will be 20, Eklund will be 19. But no, I think when you see some of these debates about guys, especially college guys, are they going to come out? Are they going to sign? Are they going to burn a year of their entry-level deal, like James Hagens, the Long Island kid who the Bruins drafted? There still seems to be some debate whether he's going to sign his entry-level deal and go right to the Bruins. Cole Hudson, we saw Caps aren't really in the playoff race, but he already made his NHL debut for the Caps. So there are guys that are going to do that. I don't really think we've seen it a lot with European guys. No matter even, I think Anton Frondel is going to do it with the Hawks, but Chicago's way out of it.
Demidov did last year, I think, right? Didn't Demidov do that last year?
What's that?
Didn't Demidov do that last year in Montreal? Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know that they're, the Islanders are trying to find, like, Max Shabanov is healthy. Duclair was out with a lower body injury, but he'd been playing. Like, they're juggling too many guys. I don't know that they need to try to force feed a 19-year-old who's had a good season in the Swedish league, but it's a whole different situation. Like, this is a kid who needs to mature physically a lot. He's only 5'9" or 5'10". So yeah, I think they're going to be patient with him, and that seems to be the right way to go given their situation. If they were 15 or 20 points out of the playoffs, sign him up, put him in the lineup, see what he can do for a couple of games, and then get ready for next year. But that's not it now.
Rupp,
anything else on the Islanders before we transition to Devils a little bit?
Yeah, just something interesting with Chris, and I don't know your guys' thoughts because I've taken this position with Macklin Celebrini all year, where I think that maybe his Hart Trophy candidacy is maybe taking a hit here because the Sharks have kind of been stumbling a little bit, but I stand true to it. If they find their way in, that's the Hart Trophy winner for me. But then a lot of people are like, well, if they don't make it, he shouldn't win the Hart. And I'm like, it depends what that looks like down the stretch. I still think you can. But that takes us to Ilya Sorokin. Like, we could sit here and say that we think he should win the Vezina, and I do. I think he's the front runner in my opinion. But what if something happens here and they don't make the playoffs? Like, I don't think a lot of people would hand out that vote for a Vezina winner to a team that's not in the playoffs. Does that mean it's just going to go to Vasi or whomever that next one is? I don't know. While he was saying that, I was kind of like, oh, that's something to think about. I mean, I don't think it should take away from what he's done, but usually I feel like in these types of things, we have these unwritten rules, and that's being one of them.
Yeah, I probably would go to Vasilevsky. I'm actually looking at save percentage. I know goal save above expected is probably the number one stat, right, for Vezina.
Yeah.
Logan
but see, that's the whole thing, though, too. Is that we're talking goalie environment night and day. What we're seeing, like, Tampa is a goalie environment, and they have a great goalie. I'm not trying to take anything away from Vasi. The Islanders are the anti-goalie environment. and his numbers are fantastic. So like, it's kind of the chicken and egg. You can always argue one side or the other, because then the goal save above expected also that are great, and that's such a strong category now to drive goaltender value and what they've been doing. It also, I'm just trying to think back in time. Like, there was probably a time let's use an example as goalie environment. If you went back to Marty Berdeur's days and they had goal save above expected, he wouldn't be in the league leaders because the team had a pretty good goaltender environment. And that's not meaning he wasn't Marty Brodeur. I think he's the best goalie to ever play the game. But I'm just saying that you got to take that with a grain of salt too. So I think you can argue both sides of this. I think the big thing for me is that the Islanders have to make the playoffs if Sorokin's probably going to win the Vezina.
Yeah, I would agree.
I'll throw the numbers out for you guys as I'm looking at Clear Sight. Ilya Sorokin, 29.5 goals saved above expectation, first in the league. Andrei Vasilevsky, 12.5, seventh in the league.
Whoa.
So,
wow.
It's a big difference.
Okay. Yeah, that's a big gap. All right, let's talk Devils. Only one real Devils conversation to have today. I mean, we could spiral and who knows where we'll go with it. But to me, with how they've played post-break, and I'll just kind of read some stats here. They're 7-5-0. They're scoring 3.33 goals per game. They're allowing 2.83 against. Their special teams is great. 30.3% on the power play, 84.8 on the PK. Pretty much right where you'd want to be as far as special teams go. If your power play is clicking at 30, it's doing pretty damn good. And if your PK is at 84, you're slightly above average, I'd say. I think teams want to be in that 80 to 85 range. Like, that's the goal of where teams would want to be in the PK. But is now that these last 12 games, 13 games for the Devils, is it Sheldon Keefe's job on the line and that's it? Like, if the Devils play well, Sheldon Keefe buys himself another year. If they don't play well and they fizzle out here in the last however many games, he's fired. Like, I don't think it's a definite that Sheldon Keefe, his job is on the line. Like, I don't think he's definitely fired come game 82.
I don't think so either, and I'm not sure it should be. So I think the big thing coming down the stretch is, can they play to what everybody thought they were, as a high octane, fast transition, generating chances type team that we saw early in the season, and we're starting to see it again now. So, I think as long as this team down the stretch here looks like a team that is able to generate and score some goals, yeah, I think he's back. And I don't know if I don't know if that would be the move to make here with this franchise. So we'll see. But I think the biggest thing for Sheldon Keefe is that they look like themselves and what everybody expects them to be. But then I also go back to some times where they had that nasty stretch there. And some of it was with Jack out. Some of it was when Jack came back. And if we remember, when Jack came back around Christmas time, he looked pretty good and was generating opportunities. And not to make this about Jack, make this about everybody else. They were getting chances. So that's the one thing, is I don't find that their offense dried up as far as getting looks. They just couldn't finish. Like, Jesper Bratt, Timo Meier, like, you can go on and on with some of these guys, they simply couldn't finish, but they were getting the looks. Well, how do you evaluate that? I don't think that should fall on a coach. So I think as long as they're getting some results down the stretch here, I think there's enough there to feel pretty confident that Sheldon Keefe would be coming back.
Arthur, anything there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that you want to be a team that gets on that every 2 years we're changing coaches if we're not hitting our marks kind of situation. I mean, we see it with the Rangers, and I think having Mike Sullivan there means that this carousel should stop. But you see some teams that do that keep the core, that keep changing, and obviously, you look at an Edmonton that had incredibly, way more success than the Devils have had, obviously, in the last 8-9 years, but changed a lot of coaches, keep most of the core together. Toronto seems like they might be headed down that same road again. I don't know that's your solution. Practically speaking, it's all going to really depend on whether Tom Fitzgerald stays or goes. Fitzy brought Keefe in. He obviously identified that was the guy. They've had some stretches where they've looked incredibly good. Those seem to have coincided with Jack being fully healthy. and the team being a little bit healthier than they've been, and their goaltending giving them what they need. So I don't know if that's the difference between Sheldon Keefe being the right guy for this and him getting kicked to the curb. You can't have. I feel like you can't, just the same way that if you're getting Ilya Sorokin level goaltending like the Islanders are, it's hard to evaluate the coaching of the rest of the group. They're giving up too many chances. With the Devils, if Jacob Markstrom doesn't get hurt at the end of, in the middle of the second or third week of the season, and he can build a proper season as the number one goalie, who knows where they'd be? I don't think that it changes. To me, that can't change your evaluation of what the coach did or didn't do, and especially a guy who's only been there less than a couple of years. So I think from that standpoint, he should stay. It doesn't mean he will. I think if there's a new GM in place, all bets are off. But I feel like a lot of the discourse around this team is, and we even brought it up, that like when they were really crushed by injuries in December, they were kind of forced to play a different way, and it didn't really suit them. And that maybe is a bad reflection on Keefe and the coaching staff. But that to me, that's a desperate measure. That's a team that's in free fall where you got to figure something out. And I feel like what they've done at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year is a lot more like what they did for the bulk of last season when they were healthy. And that, to me, says this is a good enough team to keep this going. And I think he deserves to go at it for sure.
Well, also when fans are like, I still see a lot of Devils fans wanting to fire Keefe, but do you have someone in mind that's a good fit for this team, right? Like, obviously we spoke to Peter Laviolette last week. He's someone who I'm sure would want a job. Pete DeBoer is out there. He's coached the Devils. I'm sure he'd maybe want that job. Not going to speak for either two of those guys, but it's like, if you want to fire Sheldon Keefe, do you have someone who fits what this team needs? Like, do you have someone in mind? I don't know if you guys want to play this game of like, who's the right guy for the Devils, if you don't even think it's Sheldon, which, we've seen it can be Sheldon Keefe. It's not like it can't be him, like Rupper just said. But is there really someone out there that you think is like the right guy? Like, I don't think anyone off the top of my head who I could see coaching the Devils next year. I mean, do you want to play this game or no? It's kind of like a hypothetical right now because there's not much much to talk about with the Devils. Like, let's just be honest.
No, I mean, I think the Devils have bigger things to figure out than who their head coach is right now, or unless there's something that I don't know, and I'm not inside that room, so I do not know. The only way I see a coaching change is if something comes out in exiting meetings where the players just don't, and I've seen that happen. I played on teams where that happened, and where it's just like the players, and that's not always right too. When the players complain enough, that you can't let them run it either. So, and I'm not saying that's the point here. That's the only way that I see Sheldon Keefe not back, really, unless, like Arthur said, if there's a GM change, then all bets are off, because you know how that works with guys want to pick their own guys. But there's a lot of good things I like with Sheldon Keefe. I like the accountability, that I feel like he says some hard things throughout the year, and that's all part of him growing in this coaching process too, because there's times in Toronto where you wanted it a little bit more, and he did it at times, then kind of he back off it a little bit. And I feel like now he speaks pretty candidly at times. So, I think that's what this team needs right now. So they need some continuity, some consistency. They need a kick in the butt, but I don't think it's going to come from a coaching change.
Mm-hmm.
If they did make it,
go. Sorry.
I'm just saying, if they did make it, how could you look at anybody but Laviolette? I'm not just blowing smoke because the guy came on our show, but like, if you have a team that's on the cusp and you need to go that extra mile, like, how much more of a track record does this guy need? I understand you're not going for longevity, but if I could see a scenario where Fitz stays and Devils ownership says, you need to win right now or everybody's fired, and that could pressure you into making a move where you say, like, okay, we can't change the makeup of the room that much because all the no move clauses and all those things. So what can we change? Sometimes the only option to change is the coach. And if you're going to make that move, if you got to put your team in turnaround real quick, that's Lavi's MO. You know, he's done that in 5 different spots, and you know, came close to getting to a 4th Stanley Cup in his first year with the Rangers. So, you know, yeah, I'd say that's the right candidate. I think with the group that they have, you're not starting fresh with a first-time coach or trying to experiment with somebody a little different. Like, there's a guy like Lavi out there. Peter DeBoer is a great coach too, and a guy who's gotten results right away as well. It's even with the Devils, whatever it was, almost 15 years ago. So you always, you know, I feel like we're in an age now where the top 20 coaches in wins, there's always 1 or 2 of those guys available. I mean, they had one in Lindy, and it's great to see him having success in Buffalo that he wasn't able to get this group when they were kind of in their infancy to get them moving. But you've got guys that can come in and put things on the whiteboard and put things on the ice where you're gonna improve by 10 or 12 points. So it's an option. I still think Sheldon deserves another go at it, but if they make a change, yeah, there are guys available that could give them that boost that they need next season.
Let me ask you this, Rupper. How much say do the players have, like, in those exit meetings? Like, have you been on a team where, and you don't have to name names, but like, does a GM like maybe ask one of the top dogs, like, you know, do you see a future with this coach, or is there a certain guy you want out there? Have you experienced anything like that? Because I feel like, you know, it's been very well documented that Jack Hughes and Tom Fitzgerald have a great relationship, and I could see Tom Fitzgerald maybe in a world going to Jack and saying, "Hey, do you want to run with this guy? Is there someone out there you want?" Because, you know, Fitzgerald obviously
You can't do that. I
do that.
pray that never happens. Like, you do that, it's the end. You like.
I'm
you know
just
what I'm saying?
speculating too. I'm not saying
No,
this is like a common thing. Yeah.
no. I'm not saying you're insinuating that's happening here, but I'm sure there are organizations that's happened, and that you can't do that. Listen, if it's the way the exit meetings kind of work too, and I've been on teams where guys, when you have your year end kind of bender, if you will, for a couple days when your season ends, and usually it's like you get that night, whatever your last game is, and then the next night guys are going out and we're having our time together, and then usually like the second or third day and fourth day, whatever it is kind of where you locker clean out, and exit meetings are scheduled thereafter. And there's times where, unfortunately, where maybe guys go and you vent to each other and get on the same page, and you know, that's your one time to go and air out everything. And sometimes it can work, I guess, in the way you maybe want it to, and there's times where it can work against you, and you know, it should. And I here's the thing: is sometimes those exit meetings, sometimes it's just with the GM, sometimes it's just with the coach, sometimes it's with the GM and the coach in the room. And it always gets very interesting when you have those, because as you can imagine, maybe not all the things are said when it's the coach and GM in the room at the same time. So I think it's really important job for these GMs to navigate through frustration from individuals, how the season went. But yeah, I mean, it's, if you hear the same thing over and over again, that basically the message has been lost, then I mean, what does a GM do with that, whether he thinks it's true or not? If the whole team is saying that, that's kind of like where things have evolved into. It's you know, it's a bad spot. It's it can get nasty, I think. So you know, those exit meetings are where you get everything off your chest. You try to do it in a respectful way. And then you kind of go into your summer with a you know, clear mind and work towards next year.
One of the best exit meeting stories that I've ever heard, and we could kind of lead this into our Rangers conversation. We had Keith Yandle on our morning show, and he said it must have been 15 or 16, one of those years in the Rangers, that JT Miller had his exit meeting ahead of Rick Nash. Like, Rick Nash was sitting outside waiting to go. JT was in the GM or the coach's office. And Yandle's like, I have a clip of this online somewhere. He's like, "What the hell are you doing waiting? You're Rick Nash. Like, what the hell is JT Miller's rush to get back to Ohio?" And I guess him and Kevin Hayes like took JT Miller's car and parked it on the West Side Highway or something. Like, they literally just like took his car, and it's like one of the funniest. I mean, Keith Yandle, as we all know, is like one of the better pranksters there is, but hearing him tell that story is hilarious. And there is like obviously a pecking order when it comes to exit meetings at every level of hockey. Like in junior hockey, it's the 2-year, 3-year guys who go first, and then the rookies and whatnot. In college, it's always the upperclassmen that go, and then sophomores, freshmen, and whatnot. But exit meetings for me, like I always dreaded exit meetings. They fucking sucked. Anything else on that though before we go Rangers here? Because I think the one thing with the Rangers is obviously Mika Zibanejad playing his 1,000th game tonight against the Ottawa Senators. And, you look back at that trade. We were looking back at it before. Could not believe the Rangers got Mika and a second rounder and gave up Derek Brassard and a 7th rounder. I remember at the time like being pretty heartbroken about it because Derek Brassard obviously had those incredible playoff runs and he was known as big game brass, and seeing him go for a young, like somewhat unproven guy, like Mika's career high, I think at the point had been around 50 points, which is great. Obviously it's good for a young guy, but it wasn't Derek Brassard who was putting up 4 points in an elimination game in game 6, so it's pretty cool to see how far Mika has come in his Rangers tenure. It's his 10th season here, which is crazy. He tied Adam Graves the other night for 4th all time on the goals list, but I think it's because of the recent years, maybe last year, it's been underappreciated, like how good Mika's actually really been. And just kind of wondering what your guys' thoughts are on Mika playing his 1,000th game tonight and where he is right now as far as Rangers history goes.
I remember doing a piece about that trade and talking to Bobby Ryan about, because he kind of came along a little bit. He was a little bit older than Mika, but in that Ottawa organization. And I think the perception of Mika in Ottawa as a young guy was that he wasn't serious enough about hockey. He had, he's had his DJ career that he had going on also. And, he just never quite, he has obviously, the physical tools. He's a big guy, can skate like no one else, the shot. He's always had those, and he was a top 10, top 11 pick. But he was never able to put it together on some of those Ottawa teams. And some of those Ottawa teams were good teams in the mid 2010s. So I think the Senators' thinking was they're going for a more sure thing in brass. Rangers, even though they were still kind of in that window of success, were trying to get a little younger, inject a little bit of newness into their lineup. And he had a really good first season, that 16-17 season with the Rangers. He scored a huge goal against Montreal in the first round of the playoffs that year. And wild that they ended up meeting in the second round. And I think everybody kind of thought like, Ottawa's good, but the Rangers are the Rangers. They've had so much success in that previous 3 or 4 year window. And it was Ottawa. Brassard had a great series. J.G. Pajot had the 4-goal game in Ottawa, including the OT winner. And Ottawa knocked them out on the way to the conference finals. So I think people kind of thought at the time, well, maybe this is a little bit of a changing the guard in the East, that Ottawa was going to be, and Ottawa, whatever, they were, a game 7 double OT goal against Pitt away from getting to the finals. So I think Ottawa seemed like they were set up for success for the next couple of years. And obviously it fell apart for a million different reasons. And Mika ended up being such a mainstay and a big part of their kind of resurgence through the letter and through all that stuff. And, I think it's just, sometimes in organizations, and we talk about it with younger guys here, like, whether it was all the high picks, Kakko, Hedl, Lafreniere, is it going to happen? Are you going to be able to take that step from an organization you join when you're 18 or 19 and get into the NHL through when you're 23 or 24? And, not necessarily the sort of mature veteran, those phrases that we love to use. If you're not there by a certain time and the team is, kind of impatiently waiting for you to get there, are you ever going to get there in that organization? Because they've been waiting for this growth for so long. So it was the right move for Mika in his career, and obviously his partnership and friendship with Chris Kreider kind of took them both heights on the ice, off the ice, in the annals of the Rangers history books and the record books. So it was it's a pivotal one. It's funny to think at the time everybody thought it was such a pivotal move for the Senators, but it turned out the Rangers were playing the long game smartly. Jeff Gorton making that move and thinking ahead, and here we are, 1,000 games, and a guy who, we talk about it with Chris Kreider, and obviously you don't have the Stanley Cup, and it doesn't seem like they're going to be a cup contender anytime in the near future. But as Mika continues to rise up the ranks, and he'll still be the number 1 center next season, is 93 going to go to the rafters in the Garden after he's all said and done in a few years? It's not a yes right now, but for me, it's a definite maybe and wait and see.
I mean, he leads
Yeah.
the organization in power play goals. That's the
Yeah,
one thing he holds a record for.
He's had a run of success outside of Panarin that's kind of been unequaled in the last 20 years or so. You have to go back even for like you said, 10 years here. Not a lot of guys play 10 years in the Rangers organization. It's just not, they're not built. The organization's not built that way.
Rupp, you were going to say something? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, you guys kind of touched on it, but like I still remember that time. That was kind of revered in the hockey world as a pretty lopsided trade in favor of the Ottawa Senators. So I just love looking at trades come full circle, and sometimes it's just like Arthur said, it's the timing of the player at the moment. At the moment, that was a good deal for the Ottawa Senators because they were in win now mode. You think back to. I mean, people can't forget that there were a game. Was that
they beat the Rangers that year? They beat the Rangers that year.
There were game 7 to go to the Stanley Cup Finals. Which year was that? 16 or 17?
17.
That was 17.
Chris Kunitz, the double OT winner for Pitt.
Yeah.
So I mean,
that was that year. They beat the Rangers in the second round.
Yeah. So big game brass. I mean, that's all you need to know for where Ottawa was at that time. But it's just fun seeing it come full circle. And those stats you're mentioning with Mika, talking statistically, he's one of the best all-time New York Rangers. And for an original 6 team, I mean, that's incredible in its own right. And part of it too, it's like there was a number of years there. People could probably still argue this to some degree. I think he's probably answered that. But it was always the Rangers don't have a 1C. He developed into a 1C. And, there was a stretch there where you're like, well, maybe on a good team, Mika Zibanejad would be like a second line center. And I think that what he's done has been awesome. And he's certainly had some moments in the last couple of years where you wanted maybe a little bit more from him. But here we are now. It's like the guy wants to be a New York Rangers player. He refuses to waive his no move clause, and he's been their best guy this year. So it's fun kind of revisiting that. And it's great that 1,000 game is against the Ottawa Senators. You know what I mean? Cool. Like just to make it all come full circle. It's a pretty cool moment. And Mika's been he's had quite a career up to this point.
Yeah, Mika's a very emotional guy too. I'm sure that might come out a little bit tonight. Soft-spoken emotional, not like a guy who, necessarily shows it a ton, but there are moments where you can sense it when you're talking to him. Other than that, like the only other Ranger news this week, obviously Garand makes his NHL debut yesterday, played really well, 35 saves, didn't come up with a win. Not sure if he's going to stick around. I wasn't at the morning skate today, so I'm not sure if he was there, but I do know Drew Fortescue skated today. He will probably not – he's not playing tonight, but I don't think he'll play maybe until Friday when they're home against the Blackhawks. I'm pretty sure Mike Sullivan wants to give him the week of practices, let him get acclimated a little bit before he makes his debut. Other than that, not much really to talk about this week, or at least today, in regards to the Rangers. Arthur, you have anything else you wanted to bring up as far as the Rangers go?
No, I'm interested to see Fortescue. He's been – he played at BC with Gabe Perreault, played on – it's kind of remarkable that – we're in this situation. I know the college hockey bracket just came out where, BU is out. So Cole Eiserman has, just had his Bridgeport debut with the Islanders, signing an ATO there out of BU. Cole Hudson, Drew Fortescue from BC, like James Hagen's maybe he's going to turn pro. Like these are programs that are never have guys available in March. Like it's just not a thing. It's so weird to see.
First time since 1981, the 4 teams that play in the Beanpot are not in the tournament. All 4. Harvard, Northeastern, BCBU.
As a BU alum, but also just sort of, it's great for the NHL team. It's great for prospect watchers to get a glimpse of these guys. And Fortescue's been a kind of a steady Eddie guy in that BC team, like a top pair, second pair defenseman, plays a lot of minutes, doesn't give you a lot offensively, but boy, could the Rangers use just a steady guy like that on the left side. They've got Gavrikov, whose offense has maybe been the kind of the most surprising storyline in a positive way for the Rangers season.
By far.
13 or 14 goals, really helped them bridge the gap when Adam Fox was out, and good to see, especially for a guy who signed that long. But I think below that on the left side, they've tried so many different guys.
Vakanainen.
In the last 5 years, going back to guys like Patrick Nemeth, who they'd sign and then had to give a boatload of picks to trade his contract away. They never really had a good lefty depth, steady guy. Braden Schneider's kind of been that young guy on the right.
Well, do you count Keandre? Well, he was top, I guess.
I mean,
somewhat top pair.
Keandre's a super skilled guy, and
Yeah.
they obviously miss him. But I feel like, we were talking before the show, and I'm sure we'll have this debate at some point about is Braden Schneider stalled out as a guy who's had such a high ceiling and, the baby Trouba nickname and good skater and does provide some offense, but he hasn't really been able to rise minutes-wise above Will Borgen. And so if he's kind of stalled out and needs a new deal this summer. So I'm curious to see what Fortescue can do. I don't know that he's going to be a guy that steps straight into an NHL role next season, but this is not a really deep prospect pool. So anybody that can get a little NHL experience ahead of becoming a pro, it's positive in a kind of a negative season.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. Anything else on your end, Rupper?
Nope. Just man, just waiting for these teams to give us some more to talk about. Hey, it'd be so nice if all of them were in the playoff picture. You know what I mean? Like that would have been. But at this point, it's just you got to follow the storyline, see what. Same thing the fans are seeing. Which players, hopefully young players, getting those opportunities like we mentioned, and see what they could do with it.
Yeah, we're not looking to be the hot take artists here on this show. So we're going to talk about what there is to talk about. And with that said, as always, our show is presented by Novig, the future of sports betting. On Novig, you play against other real users, not the house, and it's the only commission-free exchange. So you keep every dollar you win. You'll get better odds than traditional sportsbooks, meaning you're 10 times more likely to win in the long run. Choose the best odds or offer your own. Trade Novig coins for fun or Novig cash to win real prizes. Sign up with code DailyFaceoff in all caps. You get $50 in Novig coins when you spend $5 on your first purchase. Available in most states. You must be 21 or older to play with no purchase necessary. Thanks to everyone for listening. Thank you to Chris for calling. And thank you to our producer, Vic. We will talk to you all on Friday. Hope you enjoyed that video. And if you want to see some more Tri-State hockey content, don't forget to leave a like and comment on the video below. And also subscribe to the Daily Faceoff YouTube channel.